Good afternoon, everyone. I am, one second. Sorry, slight technical problem. Good afternoon. I am convening this joint hearing of the Committee on Higher Education and Technology, as well as the House Committee on Finance, for purposes of an informational briefing for the State Controller to update the public and the committees on the Hawaii Modernization Initiative and the progress of implementing information technology in state government. Chair Luke, did you have any comments?
No, thank you. Thank you for holding this. I think it's really important for the members in the state to understand the advances in technology that we have made in the last several years.
Thank you. So at this point, I will turn it over to State Controller Kurt Utaguro. Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Takayama, Chair Luke, and committee members on higher education and technology and House Finance. I am Kurt Utaguro, State Comptroller. On behalf of Governor David Iyie and CIO, my colleague Doug Murdoch, we really appreciate you taking the time to hear more about our financial modernization project. With me, I also have my colleague in ETS, Brian Fry, who's the Enterprise Program Manager, and he will be sharing a screen and our presentation. So if you would allow him to share that screen, I would appreciate that. And we have a quick slide presentation that we'd like to go through with that. So as Brian is calling up the, are you able to do that, Brian?
I have a technical challenge. I'll be back in about 60 seconds.
Okay. So as we get started, thanks to decision makers like yourselves and every state agency, you know, we all need better financial data. It's all about data now, and it's all about transparency to support this decisions that we all make on behalf of the public. And our ability to make and deliver on decision analysis support is going to help improve tremendously our ability to implement a lot of initiatives across the state. And, you know, Governor many years ago had a vision for financial modernization and will show the different modules that we have that are far reaching. It's really a cascading effect, if you want to call it that it's foundational in the way that in which we work internally amongst ourselves as the executive branch, and then as well as how we work with the legislature. And ultimately, that's how we affect our community at large. And the tools that we have been deploying will continue to not only enable our state employees to have the tools necessary, but it's going to make government stronger, more efficient, and obviously at the end, more transparent. So Brian, if you want to go to that next slide, just to get started. As CIO Murdoch said, any technology project is not technology, it's about people. And it affects our personal lives. So in that priority order, it's always about people, process, and technology. And it's a commitment that we all ask everyone to commit to over time. But that takes endurance and that takes perseverance. And I just want to share a few quotes that bring a project like this home. It's just having the perseverance and not being afraid to fail, but always succeeding at the end. And as long as we have that positive energy, we'll succeed. The next slide is really about technology principles. And I don't need to preach to the choir. This has really impacted our lives. And it's personal that these famous brands have achieved popularity because of their intense focus on delivery. And people say that Apple was easy to use, but it was because of Apple's focus on design and user experience that makes it easy. And Google was quickly accessing information, but it's how they gathered that data and used it to make it faster. And of course, many of us use Amazon, especially during the pandemic, and it's deployed much of what has been done today because of its innovative processes. But these are all things that have been done through innovations, and that's really transformational. And so that's where we get into our partnerships that we have. And the next slide will show that a little pictorial that our partnership with Transform Hawaii Government. And with if you would indulge me, I asked Christine Sakuda, the executive director, to join in on the call this afternoon to explain some of the partnerships that we have with the private sector, which is equally important for the state. We can't do it alone. And so Christine has been a proponent. She has a good board that supports the state modernization over many years. And this was a storyboard that we sat around and talked about where the state is today in its current state and what it could be into the future. So the top part would be the current state, and then the bottom being the upgraded future state. But Christine, are you on? Can you share a few things about who Transform Hawaii is, and how you work with government to support our initiatives?
Yes, thank you very much, Comptroller. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mahalo. Aloha, Chair Takayama, Vice Chair Clark, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Cullen, members of the committees and the community. My name is Christine Sakuda, and I'm the Executive Director of Transform Hawaii Government. Thank you, Kurt, for inviting me to briefly share about THG. I appreciate the opportunity to be partnering with the state on these major change initiatives. Every government administration inherits the challenges of the past. Outdated legacy systems and workflow processes impede our state's efficiency and progress and can become paralyzing and a distraction. The only way to break the cycle is to take ownership of these challenges and bring the community and resources together to coalesce around viable solutions. We all know modernization is vitally important, but fixing them is a challenge. Governor David Ige was willing to take on these challenges and has made major strides to transform our government. Under his leadership, the state tackled the toll tax modernization, improved cybersecurity protocols, helped implement Office 365 and a unified email system, modernized payroll and time and attendance, and these have made the lives of state employees and all of Hawaii residents easier and less stressful. And now we are about to embark on a game-changing 3-year minimum modernization project to overhaul the state's financial management system and integrate it with other core business systems in government. This groundbreaking milestone takes a tremendous amount of commitment, collaboration, and resources. The administration's accomplishments would not have been possible without the support of DAGS, with Kurt as comptroller and Doug as the state CIO. This shows what can be done when there is a common vision and a spirit of lokahi. Kurt has always candidly shared about the challenges with the existing systems and has been very open to support. Change is necessary but disruptive. There can be resistance, but in the end, everyone benefits. And government modernization is a kako thing. It's been a privilege for THD to be part of these changes. Our mission is simple but challenging: to help Hawaii thrive by being a catalyst of modernization. We help to bring change not only through technology, but also through people and process. We identify opportunities to help government accelerate their journey towards modernization. We see ourselves as a bridge to strengthen the relationships between government and the community. This takes education, advocacy, and a desire to bring stakeholders together to work on a shared vision. When there is a will to change and succeed, THG helps things to the finish line by providing funding and resources to high impact initiatives that government may not otherwise be able to support. As a state, we've come a long way, and THG plans to be here to continue the positive momentum that is underway. Governor Ige's administration helped to propel these state initiatives forward, but there is still much work to do. There are issues that are impossible to fix in a governor's term, but we are in a good place and positioned well for change. You have our pledge. Transform Hawaii Government is committed to work alongside with every administration to transform government services. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Christine. I appreciate that. And so the partnership, I may not be here, but Christine will certainly be here as we continue on. But the next slide, Brian, kind of shows just examples, and I don't need to preach to this, but this is what we face with every day, and this is what our constituents face and experience every day. Amazon and eBay, right? Netflix, as I mentioned, Amazon Prime, Expedia, TripAdvisor. They've changed how we do things, and we have to keep up. You know, Uber and Lyft changed how we get shared rides. I call it technophobia. As we go through the technological and digital transformation, keep in mind that technology will do a lot of things for us, but it's also going to undo certain things. And that's what we also have to keep track of. And my example is Blockbuster. Many years ago, Blockbuster built into a multi-billion-dollar or hundreds of million-dollar company that had locations statewide, right? Thousands of locations across the US. And they thought they had a great distribution channel. They had an opportunity to purchase a small little company called Netflix, but their vision, their leadership thought that the distribution channel that they had was sufficient enough and they didn't need a company like Netflix, not understanding that technology was about to happen called internet and a streaming video capability. And the rest is history. There's no more, well, I think there's one Blockbuster left in Alaska, I believe. But a transformation like that is something that we as leadership need to understand and to make sure that we also know what it undoes and position the state well to do that. And so being different in the 21st century, in my next slide, is really just thought, it's more thought processing of how quickly things are happening. Just not even 2 decades ago, there were no smartphones, no Facebook, no YouTube. But we have to recognize what's a trend and what's a fad. But the world is flatter and it's accelerating quickly. There's going to be more change in the next 5 years than we had over 50 years. And so, but digitization changes the game because it erases all borders. But at the end of the day, our consumers, your constituents, the taxpayers, the public demand and expect a better experience, a user experience. And that's what modernization will do for us. On the next slide, is the journey that the state has been committed to under Governor Ige's administration, and well before that, and well after that. Governor has completely embraced the idea and notion that baby steps are the way to go. We tried to do, the state tried to do a massive ERP, and that wouldn't fly. It's too expensive. But we were able to surgically implement certain aspects of the modernization over time. And that's why this legislative body is important. The partnership between executive branch and the administration and the governor and the legislature are very important. And so the governor is committed, and I hope that this legislative body will be committed into the future as well. So we're in that last box right now. That's not the final box for an EFS system that we're about to replace, that 45-year-old mainframe application. And so I want to introduce my colleague, Brian Fry, who joined us from the Department of Education. He's our enterprise program manager, and he is well experienced in implementing FMSs. And on the next slide, we'll show the foundation for building that future. And so Brian, please introduce yourself and go to the next couple of slides.
Yeah, thanks, Kurt. So for the sake of time, like Kurt said, I'm the Enterprise Program Manager within DAGS in the Office of Enterprise Technology Services. And I had the pleasure of working for the Department of Education before, where we did a very similar endeavor, modernizing their mainframe system to a cloud-based application. So I'm looking forward to doing it again. I have a metaphor I'd like to talk through a bit today to help describe what the state has done and we continue to do. And we've been building out foundational systems that will provide us the opportunity to build into the future for things that we don't even know exist because they don't exist today. But without putting together these building blocks like the Uniform Chart of Accounts, our pay system, time and leave, and now the enterprise financial system, it'll give us the ability to build this skyscraper for the state of Hawaii, which will have these future features and functions based on the hard work and the strong foundation that we're building today. A lot of what has been done to date has primarily been benefiting, the state by, improving processing time and reducing paper transactions. But even those things have incrementally improved things for our constituents, the taxpayers, and the citizens of Hawaii. And in this future vision, we see having the opportunity to have much richer data, data that's coalesced amongst multiple systems as opposed to being stuck in these individual silos, which will give us new insight into what's happening and enable us to make more decisions with greater transparency. So continuing along the metaphor, here's a picture, which many of us have seen similar things happening here, with all the new skyscrapers going up. The first thing that really needs to happen is that this enormous hole is dug into the ground. And, I'm not a structural engineer. I'm not pretending to be one today. But I understand that without investing in this enormous hole, building a strong foundation, having the rebar as you see here, but also all of the other components that are required to have a system as big and grand as the skyscrapers that we have here in Hawaii and elsewhere, you won't have a safe, healthy, functioning environment. You won't have the heating and cooling. You won't have the fire suppression systems. You won't have the elevators. Those systems are built and tucked away where people don't see them. And that's a lot of what we have been doing and what we will continue to do so that we can build to that future state that gives us these new features and opportunities. So again, once this new skyscraper is built on these fundamental systems, we'll have new opportunities because we'll be able to leverage the data across these systems and give us insight into, future decisions and have better opportunities to have an understanding of where we are, where we've been, and hopefully where we're going. So the next few slides speak to some of these future visions. So, Kurt?
Yeah, just quickly, the systems today are old and they're not integrated. So one of the byproducts of being cloud-based, and that's what our SAP platform is going to be, is it provides that integration for futures. So if we go to slide 11, Brian, it will show some of the examples of what we need to combine together, and these are inherent. So the big one is a data warehouse, and that would replace what we call data mart today, what some of you are familiar with, and extract data in the future. And as you keep going, Brian, some examples of this are just how you're going to get access to the information in a lot more transparent and real-time way, so you don't have to wait for information. The next slide, Brian, would show the same type of integration for workflow. And so not to belabor the point, but in terms of accessibility, where we need to pay a lot of attention is in the integration work between departments so that we can do an appropriation, say, and get it from the time you appropriate funds as a legislative body over to DAGs to open the accounts. And then when we have to actually get the encumbrance going to get the workflow for approvals and ultimately allotment. And so a lot of these examples of how we're going to be automating workflows is going to be a key component to some of the tangible benefits that employees will see, as well as the speed to get things to get purchased or transacted. The next slide shows similarly how we're going to ultimately improve public services with different examples that you see there. But again, it's the integration of the system that we're really shooting for improved services to the public that they will be able to realize, whether it's in paying taxes. The next slide is really just more what we've purchased. And thanks to, I want to thank all of you again for that appropriation to support the FMS. We're going to tackle it in phases, and these phases will take time. But you can see that phase one is predominantly the big part of it. We added a couple of other modules, and that's what this system is, right? An SAP platform is cloud-based. It's already operational. And if I had to summarize what we just purchased, I would say 70% of what was purchased is already operational and working. So we'll need to understand what we purchased, how it works, and try to modify and accept why it doesn't work for us. 20% of the system is called configuration, and we'll be able to customize or modify the system to the state's specific needs and the user needs. We will engage the legislative side to make sure that we address and answer or try to accomplish your needs as well. And hopefully less than 10% will be customizable. And the only reason why we would even venture to customize is it's in statute. And if the statute is good, or we may recommend at some point we change statute. But the whole idea behind an SAP platform in the cloud is to utilize and leverage best practices that they have across other states and using that. But you can see the different modules that we've purchased in warehouse, data warehouse, of course, the block and tackle things with accounts payable and receivable, and general ledger. The ones that are of interest to budget and finance, of course, are the bond tracking. So CIP bond financing that we issue different types of bonds. We need to keep better track of when it's issued, how it's used, what kind of projects and funding is applied to, as well as in the grants management area. That's an area that another one of our executive sponsors, Craig Hirai, was interested in. And Craig is also supportive of this project. Once those are accomplished and implemented over that period of time in late 2024 and 2025, we'll then apply for and request for additional funding for other modules if appropriate. So appropriations budget. The SPO, State Procurement Office, is already looking at an e-procurement module. And if they proceed with one prior to, by the time phase 3 comes in, that'll be an independent project. But you can just see the point of this is that it'll take time. In addition to that, we're going to layer in what Brian referenced earlier as a uniform chart of accounts. That is going to be the single most important project to standardize the way we do our accounting for expense codes. And so every time we apply an account, want to get access to data, that all the accounts across the state are referenced in the correct way and standardized. And so the next chart really kind of encapsulates, and Brian kind of drew this up, and maybe Brian wants to explain how the systems integrate and how it benefits everyone.
Yeah, again, it's starting from the foundation and working up into supporting our constituents. So we built, and are building enterprise-wide functionality, for the state as an entire organization, working to improve our work processes. So not necessarily continuing to do what we've always done just because it's been done that way, but examine why are we doing it, and then see if we can streamline those to get to the same endpoint, but quicker. We'll be engaging all the jurisdictions and agencies that are involved. So again, DAGs and BNF are the primary departments that are working on this project, but it impacts multiple jurisdictions and agencies within the state. So we'll be working with them closely to ensure their needs are understood and that they're aware of what we're working on as part of the financial system. And ultimately we'll be realizing positive internal impacts, better compliance with regulation, and through the reporting that Kurt referred to. This new system, the reporting is a core component. It's not a third-party add-on that you have to do additional work to get the data. It's really fundamental to this system, which is one of the key benefits. So we've been talking about systems, and core components of that, the chart of accounts, the governance that we have in place, working on standardization and establishing best practices, then that benefits the processes that we're going to be using, procurement, payroll, and the others listed here, which then will benefit our agencies, which will then ultimately benefit the programs and our citizens, constituents, and the entire state of Hawaii.
So yeah, to sum this up, really we're going to be doing the accounting. The state has multiple accounting systems. We don't have one. And so we're going to be impacting some direct departments that we do the accounting for. In other cases, like DOT Highways or UH, they do their own accounting, but they'll have to develop the interface. They call it crosswalking to bridge the gap so that we have the same information so that at the core level, you can access information across the state, that you don't need to go to different areas to get that information. And that's kind of like what Data Mart did, but now we're trying to do it on a more real-time basis and transparent basis. And ultimately, this benefits everyone. And so on the funding side, don't need to cover that. That's all thanks to you. And we appreciate your continued support. We did apply and got through budget and finance some ARPA funds to help with the implementation side, the resource, because this is a large project and the state doesn't have sufficient dedicated resources to get this done. And so we do have a budget requested as well for additional support for the system side. So, so basically that's it. And then the last slide is really just summarizing our overarching goals. And it's really a collaboration as I started the meeting with, and we appreciate that collaborative effort between yourselves and the executive branches. This is about change, and this is going to be the hardest part, as we said, with people. Organizational change management is fundamentally what we're going to be doing here, and we're going to have to get everyone on board to agree. We may disagree sometimes, but at the end of the day, we need to change how we do business. And the cloud-based technology is going to help us do that. But it's really a long-term commitment, starting with governor's commitment, Governor Ige's commitment, and we just have to maintain that discipline to keep it going. We can't stop. It's in our best interest as a state to continue. So on behalf, again, on Doug Murdoch and myself and Brian and Christine, we appreciate the opportunity to present. I know we just went a few minutes over, Chair Takayama, but happy to answer any questions that you may have or your committee may have. So thank you.
Thank you, Controller. You covered a lot of ground. At this point, let's open it up to questions. I can't see all our, okay. Can we open up to both committees? Is that okay, Chair? Questions from members of either committee? Please raise your hand or scream and yell. Seeing none, Chair. Any questions? I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Representative Baladi, would you proceed, please?
Sure, thank you. So I'm still new to this committee and I love working on the Higher Education Technology Committee. I just had some questions. I was most familiar with kind of the modernization from the Health and Human Services perspective, but when I look at the slide that you have on data warehouse, finance, ledger accounting, I guess I'm not quite sure about what all it is that we're building as part of our modernization efforts. Mr. Otoguro, can you expand upon what this data warehouse is? Is this a physical data warehouse in a data center? And I ask because I noticed that one of the line items in the budget request is a $25 million for the data center. Can you kind of flesh out for me, paint a picture of what that is?
Yeah, I can have, if CIO is still on, explain the data center aspect. That's a physical recommendation to move the data center from Kalanimoku in the basement to a better facility. That is something that is necessary over the long term. I don't know if Doug on or not? Yeah, he is. Mr. Murdoch, you want to explain that data center just a bit?
Sure, I'm on. Yep. So the data warehouse is you know, is a software element that, we're going to put all the data from financial management into one place so that it can be analyzed by data experts. The data center is a physical location where we put the machines that run the different IT components that we have. And right now we're in the basement of Moku and in a bunch of different closets around the state. So we're trying to consolidate everything into one location and create greater cybersecurity for all that data.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Please proceed.
So is the $25 million, is there already a new place already cited, or what's the plan for that going out? And then is there ongoing cost of maintenance? Again, I just remember from my time as health chair when we were looking at COLEA and all of those systems, there was always the cost also of ongoing maintenance and operations.
Yeah, sure. The data center will have ongoing cost of operations once it's built, which, it'll probably take a couple of years to put it in place. We do have some state land on various locations that are good targets for placing a data center, but we have not done any design work or any of that yet. We do know that there are data centers that you can buy that are modular, where you can buy, sort of like containers, but not really containers. They're pre-built. And then if you have a piece of land, they put a concrete pad and they put in all the equipment that's needed, and then they put the modular data center in place. So that would be the fastest way to get to having a data center.
I don't want to monopolize, so I'll pass the question bar.
Yeah, I'm
Thank
happy.
you. We have
happy to talk
questions.
with you one-on-one.
We have questions from Representative Kobayashi, followed by Representative Iligan. Representative Kobayashi, please proceed.
Hello. I'm wondering if there are any state agencies that are excluded or will not be part of the system. You had DOT highways listed in your graphic, but not DOT airports or DOT harbors.
Good point, Representative. We didn't list them all. DOT highways is actually have purchased the same platform, believe it or not, that we just purchased. So they're a little ahead. Airports already has been placed. So in those cases for harbors and airports, we'll have to develop that interface, that crosswalk between systems. So they'll do their own processing. Those are the agencies that will do their own. In other cases like health, Department of Health, others, we actually do their accounting. And so they'll be much more engaged.
Are any agencies excluded?
The judiciary will be excluded outside of maybe providing some information to the data warehouse. But everybody else, I think is going to be feeding some sort of information into it, just like payroll. But I don't know, Brian, did we define the whole scope of the state yet? Of who's in and who's out?
We definitely have a preliminary list, but not a finalized list. But like you're saying, some agencies may opt to run their own system internally, but they'll roll up the data into the state system, like it's being done today with Famous.
Right.
I see. So will that include, for instance, the state legislature, the Hawaii hospital system, HHSC?
The HHSC will have to interface and provide data into the system, but they have their own accounting system. Same as the legislature, I believe you have your own accounting system. I don't think we're going to replace that, but you'll need to understand what we're doing with the Uniform Chart of Accounts. But as far as changing your accounting system, there's no plans to do that. Now, what we do to impact your system is the next phase. That's called discovery phase. And so we will absolutely be reaching out to all the different state agencies over time, now that the project has kicked off, to explore exactly what you just asked, Representative Kobayashi. How does this impact us? And what do you have to do, if anything? So we're at that stage of the beginning of the project. Doug, you wanted to add anything?
Well, I just wanted to say that I think in the RFP, we generally only included the executive branch for the primary functions of the accounting system, including transacting business. But other jurisdictions like judiciary and legislature and some parts of the executive branch like DOE, UH, and DOT highways were not included in transacting business in our system, but all of those will transact in order to, will report into the system in order for the state to do its annual reporting every year.
Thank you. Representative Iligan, followed by Representative Peruso.
Thank you, Chair. This is an addition to what Rep. Bellotti was asking questions on. It's a couple of questions I wanted to ask. CIO Murdoch, regarding the physical data center, what made you decide to go for physical instead of like contracting out some sort of data house where it's not really our responsibility of operating, managing it, where somebody else is, and contract that service to be able to store data?
That's a good question. There's a combination of a lot of reasons. One of them is there are certain elements of data that require specific governmental control. For example, criminal justice data system has to be under our direct control. There are some that require other controls that we need to keep in place, in terms of physical security. And, honestly, there's also an opportunity for us to do some workforce development in working with a data center like we have now. I also think that some state departments are not comfortable at this point in time going to a non-government data center with the data that they have. So a combination of things. I think over time we'll continue to move things to the cloud and to other data centers. We do have things in 3 or 4 private data centers now. For example, our payroll system is in a private data center. And our mainframe has actually moved into mainframe as a service, which essentially is the cloud. So we are moving toward that in that direction, but we still have a need for a data center at this time.
So is there more possibility to try to push less sensitive information that doesn't require those things? Are we doing enough to be able to push that data out?
Yeah, I think we are, but it's something that takes time. We'll say that, we want to go to the cloud in a smart way so that we have the chance to modify our systems so they're ready for the cloud. Some of our systems are old and not ready yet to go there. Some of them will need additional security features before they're ready to go to the cloud. Some of them will need substantial redesign just because they're chatty, and so there's some latency in how they operate in that kind of environment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Caruso.
Yeah, so I just want to see if there's, and I may have missed this, I had to pop out for a phone call, and you may have already addressed this, but I'm curious about the way in which this effort interfaces with the work that some of our agencies, DLNR and Department of Ag, are engaged in around land management systems, because so much of our wealth is in land. And I'm wondering if, and I understand that this is a financial and accounting system that you folks are working on, but can you talk a little bit about whether or not there's any effort to connect the two kinds of systems? And if so, what that looks like?
There is asset management included in the new financial management system. So we're managing land as an asset, but we're not managing land in the perspective of what the land use is.
Okay, so I guess, are you then pulling from their land management system to understand the value of the assets for your system? Is that what's happening?
Yeah,
okay.
Assuming we can do that, that would be the best way, is to create a connection.
Yeah, we'll need to get that inventory, Rep. Caruso, because of other needs that we have financially, like insurance as an example, so appraisals and things of that nature. So yeah, the integration of that will work. But as Doug said, we're not there to manage what they do with the land.
Right. But have you started those conversations around the interface yet?
No, not yet. We just kicked off the project a couple weeks ago. And
Oh,
so this is timely. This is timely because your input and insights as you talk to all of the agencies are important. So we can focus and do what your needs are and what you're hoping for is what we're trying to do. And we'll come up with the big list. And like everything else, we have to prioritize and tackle it. But we want to get the scope now. And so this is timely. So that's why we appreciate Chair Takayama's invitation.
thank you. Mahalo, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Chair Luke? Great. Okay, I just have two quick questions, and forgive me, they're very much layman's questions. But if I could ask Kurt or anyone else, on a scale to one to 100, with 1 being where we were maybe 10 years ago as a state, how far have we come in terms of modernization / integration of our data systems? On a scale of 1 being nowhere to 100.
I think Doug can answer that because he was here before me, but the way I see it, the step forward with Governor Ige was a huge step forward. The modernization of tax, the investment that Doug did many years ago to define a uniform chart of accounts as very foundational, things that you don't see. The payroll modernization, I believe Doug told me that that's the first time that all state agencies interface together. A huge step forward. And that came with some change management. And then once that building block was done, then time and leave. So on a scale of 1 to 100, it's hard for me to say because there's so many systems in the state, but I think we're at least a third of the way there with payroll. There's over 63 or 65, depends on any month, 1,000 employees that get paid. Doug told me that on time and attendance, we used to process 80,000 leave documents or sick leave or what have you, paper-based. That's all eliminated now. So in terms of making those baby steps, those are huge steps forward because of the ability for the state to integrate. And we saw firsthand how different agencies were doing payroll a little bit different. And so with one centralized system now, we're able to consolidate. And that was, to me, a big step forward under Governor Ige. And then now the accounting side will uncover a lot of different things as we get to the uniform chart of accounts. I can assure you of that. Once we establish that, though, as Brian showed on the foundational side, if we can all agree on standardizations of that chart, how we account for things, when supply, employee overtime, definitional things, furniture, whatever the expense codes are, if we can get all agencies to agree to comply, then from your perspective as the legislature, you can see exactly where the state's spending its money. I wouldn't say at a touch of a button, but through this data system that we're going to be building and collapsing and consolidation. Once that's done, Rakayama, then I would say we're advanced into the 80% because it's all about data. The subsystems can feed, but to rebuild this central data management system or data warehouse is one, to put data there, but to provide access to all of you is going to be where the rubber meets the road and that where the value comes in. And then we can make better decisions. You absolutely can, as well as on our side on a day-to-day basis. But as the legislative body that appropriates funds, you can will be able to see how these funds are being deployed, and not on an annual basis, on a monthly basis, on a daily basis, whatever frequency, if we design it that way.
Thank you. Okay, a third of the way there. Okay.
Can I give it just my quick answer on that?
Go ahead, please.
This is Doug Murdoch. We would look at this in two parts. One is, how well are we doing with shared services that are modern and evergreen? So we switched over from Lotus 123 to Microsoft Office 365, for example, a few years ago. We have a lot of shared cybersecurity tools that are used across the state because of investments made by the legislature. So we have a lot of maturity in enterprise architecture where we know what we own and how it fits together and what we need to do to move forward. So we've made some tremendous strides in enterprise shared services and working together as a state that wasn't there before the CIO became an office within the state. The second area is on modernization and different systems. So in modernization, we probably are, I would say in shared services, we're probably 70%. In modernization, we're at about 50% right now. We've modernized some huge systems like the tax system, payroll, time and attendance, and some others. We're well underway with modernizing others like the unemployment insurance application, ERS and EUTF benefits administration. And then we have a few that we haven't started yet, like child support enforcement and child welfare. So, we're pretty far along at getting going with our modernizations. We just have to stay on course and keep things moving. And I think, we're about maybe 3 or 4 years away from being 75, 80% across the board in terms of good modernization of the state and really great beneficial impact for citizens.
Okay, thank you very much, Doug. My last question is, in moving away from a paper-based system, one of the things that about a paper-based system is it's not subject to hacking. We've all seen stories about counties and states that have been subject to blackmail from hackers who get into their systems. So my question is, how comfortable are either of you about our protections against such an event happening to our system?
It's always possible. I'll run Doug a commercial. I'm highly confident in Doug's ability and his chief security officer's ability. Doug threw out some numbers to me that were mind-boggling in terms of how many times a day or an hour that his system gets hacked into. It's in the millions, and it's scary, but we don't get hacked. And it's because of Doug's good work and his people's good work. But Mr. Murdoch, you can give a more technical view of Rep. Takayama's concern or comment.
Yes, thank you. We have all kinds of attempts to penetrate the system, and from time to time, something gets in. What we've been able to do is create layers of security, and then have robotic process automation so that, for example, if we find something in the system that shouldn't be there, we're able to go and look at the rest of the system and delete it from everywhere. So we've done a lot of great work in cybersecurity. That's not to say that we can't be attacked and hacked, but it is to say that we're pretty good about responding quickly if something gets in and cleaning up. So our incident management, I think, has been good. Our automation is good, and our layers of security are good. But we will continue to work on it and do better. Cybersecurity is like, saying, if you said, can my house burn down? I'd have to say, yes, it can, but there are things you can do to stop that from happening. And cybersecurity is kind of the way. Somebody can get in, but there are lots of things that we can do to stop that from happening or stop the fire before it gets very far.
Thanks. I think we have a follow-up question from Representative Bellotti.
Thank you, Chair. I normally wouldn't do this because I know we're wrapping up. It sounds like we're wrapping up, but just hearing the good work of Mr. Otoguro and Mr. Murdoch, I do really appreciate, because having been here and have sat through so many modernization conversations, it's really wonderful to hear that we're 3 to 4 years away from really good modernization, according to what Mr. Murdoch said. So I guess my question is, because we only occupy our spaces for a short period of time, and we are seeing on the horizon a transition, what are the steps being taken by DAGS and ETS now to ensure a strong transition when we see a new administration?
That's a good question. Well, part of it is just the projects itself and the people behind it. People like Brian Fry, who will be here when we're not. That's one. The commitment to modernize and the structure that Doug puts in place and the people and the teams that he has to put in place. And we're working with the legislature to ensure that we have in-house people that drive this. That's what it comes down to, Rep. Bellotti. And I look at Christine Sakuda on the THG side. She's here for a reason, and I asked her to be here. Transform Hawaii Government is a private entity, a nonprofit entity driven by the private sector, but their commitment is to help the government transition over government, over administrations. And it's not a directive, it's not authoritative, but they're the one constant that has been in, Christine, how many governors, since you've been there, how many governors or administrations? Have you seen?
2.
2.
Yeah, soon to be 3.
Yeah, and how many CIOs, right? So there is Transform Hawaii government that has been important, that I see the value in them. Because again, Christine brought me up to speed when I first started, and she'll bring the next comptroller or CIO up to speed because she and the private sector are that committed to make sure that the state succeeds in that modernization.
And I would
Thank
just add, yeah, I will add, we have a strategic plan that's documented, that's approved by the IT steering committee that we share with all the departments. We continue to work on that. So there is a plan and there is a steering committee that helps. And if there's a new CIO, then that person will have those references to start with.
Thank you. And thank you, Chair, for letting me ask that question.
Thank you. And I just want to offer a deep thanks to all 4 of you presenters for a very useful and informative presentation. So with that, we're adjourned.